Hello, BookTube. I want to check in on a whole bunch of ongoing BookTube events this weekend. BookTube events, either my own or other people's, that I've been participating in behind the scenes, but also ignoring on camera. That's not good. That's not why we're all here. So I want to check in on one series that's going on now. That's a classic Steve fit. I've been enjoying the videos that I've been seeing enormously, as you would predict. Faith and Books instituted a read-along of the Horatio Hornblower novels, C.S. Forster. And naturally, she went to the natural person that you would expect. She went to Mark Richardson to help her do that. And they've been talking about the Hornblower books. One book a month. There were 11 Hornblower novels. So if you start in February with, Midshipman Hornblower, then you're well on your way. Then you'd be well on your way for the year. But it really is kind of casual. You can jump in wherever. I have been due for a reread of the Hornblower books for a long, long time, so I have been doing it. I read Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, and I've never really enjoyed the book, and I didn't enjoy it this time either. It's lively, of course. It's lively. Forster is a really, really good writer. You really realize that when you read his books, especially when you read a number of them back to back. The problem here is twofold. One, a lot of you will know, C.S. Forster's, his Hornblower novels star Horatio Hornblower, he is a seaman in the Napoleonic era in the British Navy. And the first Hornblower novel is Hornblower as a captain. He's the captain of his own vessel. And it took off. Fans loved it. These have been enormously popular. It took off. And Forster continued following Hornblower's adventures, but he also went back in time to give us earlier Hornblower adventures in the Navy that he didn't start Hornblower's story at Hornblower's first step on board a naval vessel. So he goes back and does that. Mr. Midshipman Hornblower is an example of that. And the problem with doing that is twofold. One is that the author is going to feel compelled to give us the same character, only younger, which is not how things work in life, as all of you know. If any of you have reached your fourth decade, you know that's true. There's some elements in common, but you're not exactly the same. You didn't have that preformed personal so-and-so magic right from the beginning. But whenever an author does this with a character, where they write retrospectively, they write earlier adventures, they inevitably do it. That's been happening for 200 years in fiction. And it's not believable. It takes me out of the story. It bugs me every time it happens. And the other problem is well, I mean, in a way, it's connected, right, with that first one, which is that a lot of dramatic stuff is off the table. If you, let's say you have an adventure character like Tarzan of the Apes, and you start off with him as Tarzan of the Apes, and he's commander of the animals of the jungle, and then you write a novel about young Tarzan, well, all your readers know that he lives to be at least as old as he was in that first novel. They know that he isn't crippled or maimed. We know that he isn't lost forever. We know that he's not chained in a slave galley anywhere. We know that all those things don't happen. Or if they happen, we know they're going to be quickly resolved. And I think that saps a little dramatic energy from the whole concept. That's another thing that bothers. Also, when an author goes back and retroactively tells an earlier adventure, an adventure of their popular character in an earlier time, another element that bothers me is that is being driven by the market. And I cannot stand books that are driven by the market. I think it really shows. Hornblower is a tremendously talented writer, as I said, so I got to enjoy that part of it. But I don't know if this is a rule for Faith's Hornblower series, but I am reading these in chronological order rather than publication order. And that means in February, I am rereading Lieutenant Hornblower, which, as you can see up top there, this is number 2 in chronological order. We start with Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, then we move on to Hornblower as a lieutenant. But it's number 7 in publication order. So you have a lot of those endemic problems. You know this character, you know things about this character that this character doesn't know yet. And that, I guess a lot of readers must like that. I find that grows tedious pretty quickly. But at least Lieutenant Hornblower doesn't have another problem that I had with Mr. Midshipman Hornblower that I always have in retrospective novels like that. Of course, there's a kind of interest in wanting to know, what Jack Aubrey was like as pimply-faced swab. But would it be wrong of me to say that a large part of the interest in these books comes from the main character having what the 21st century refers to as agency? A midshipman has no agency. So if you're going to give it to them, as happens in Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, then you have to have them being almost a supernatural being. Hornblower in Mr. Midshipman Hornblower is not only supernaturally there at the right time every single time, but he's supernaturally virtuous. He has all the moral certainty and the moral action of a much older character. So it isn't believable. I think it just isn't believable. Whereas a lieutenant does have some agency. In this book, we meet Hornblower again. He is a lieutenant on the HMS Renown. He's the youngest. He's the lowest lieutenant on the ladder, so he doesn't have all that much influence. But he is an officer, and I like that a lot better. That works a lot better. And Forster doesn't push things in this novel because he doesn't have Hornblower saving the British Navy or anything like that. Not really. Instead, the dramas involved here tend to be a lot smaller in scale, a lot more shipboard on scale. For instance, most memorably in this book, the captain of the Renown, Captain Sawyer, is a Queeg kind of character. He's got his ball bearings. You almost expect him to start talking about his strawberries. He is one of those squinty-eyed, weird, Quint-style, paranoid captains. And naturally, that means that his suspicions are going to fall on the Christ-like character of Horatio Hornblower. And that creates a good kind of drama in here. Also, this book famously is where Hornblower meets William Bush, Lieutenant Bush, who will be his right-hand man forever. Just inseparable from Hornblower is Bush. This was terrific. This reread was just terrific. So all of the stuff, all of the elements that I'm talking about that bothered me in Mr. Midshipman Hornblower, they're largely fading away in this book. So I tremendously enjoyed the experience. I love Forster anyway, but this is repairing a lot of those problems. And the problem with following a character like, Hornblower was so popular that Forster felt, if I need the mortgage, then I'd better keep writing these books. I'm not saying that he was a sellout. I'm sure that he was interested in the character. And writers like this, like Forster or Alexander Kent or Dewey Lambton to a slightly lesser and very different degree, also Patrick O'Brien in a way, they want to advance their characters in station in part so that they can dramatize different aspects of British command during the period. There are things that a captain can't do. There are things that a captain won't know. If you have a canny writer involved, you're going to want to write a story about Admiral Aubrey. You're going to want to do that in order to show things that you couldn't show in earlier books and lower ranks. I acknowledge that, and Forster really does that. I think he does it better as he goes along in publication order or in chronological order. So we'll go on next month to the next one. I hope that a lot of you are joining. This is a tremendously fun read along, and trust me, if you've never read Hornblower, if you think of this as your father's type of book, a seagoing yarn, it's not really for me. Give Forster a chance to work on you. I think you'll find that he does. I know for sure that this Hornblower read along has been making converts. Mark Richardson and I have been talking about Hornblower on our respective channels forever and ever. This author will make you a convert if you give him half a chance. So I would urge that you do that, no matter how you want to do it. A Hornblower a month, you can either read them in publication order or in chronological order. You can do either one. But I'm going to go on to the next one. I'm going to go on to book 3 in chronological order to reread for next month. But I wanted to check in with this one, the Hornblower saga, just in case. Let me know if you're involved or if you want to be. But I'm going to wrap this up before I lose the light. But I will be back. Thank you, Book 2.